on the fringes. One of the fundamental principles that our nation was built upon finds itself on the fringes of endangerment. One of the guiding lights of our Constitution and the liberties in which we enjoy is the freedom of religion. What has brought it at the focal point of consternation and conversation in Capitol Hill is the building of a mosque a stone's throw away from the World Trade Center. Pushing the argument of opposition is the paid sound of ignorance on the other side of the aisle. The blogging heads have a misconception about Islam, that religion just breeds suicide bombers. Nothing about its tenets, about its faith, about what it is that it believes. Shankar Van Damme, author of the book that has the longest title I know, The Hidden Brain, How Our Conscious Minds Elect Precedents, Control Markets, Wage Wars, and Saves Lives. The author of this book dedicated a whole chapter of doing a diagnostic analysis as to what happens into the psychosis of an extreme individual where they would sign up to be a suicide bomber. The author went around the length and breadth of the planet and interviewed 4 suicide bombers who had a failed attempt. They tried to kill themselves and those who were in the public square, but due to technical difficulties, it did not come off. As a consequence, they find themselves incarcerated. After interviewing them, he discovered that 2/3 of them hesitated upon hearing the mission, but had to be commandeered with positive proof text pressure from those who were in the subsect or in Al-Qaeda. In order to soldier through this life-changing and life-ending mission, they had to go through a psychological preparation that would put them to a place where they would not suffer an emotional breakdown. So in the grueling months leading up to the date of detonation, they had to practice with intentionality the psychological state of disassociation. Disassociation is when it is that you shut yourself down from every disturbing thought so that you are in it, but you refuse to participate in anything around you that's negative. One beleaguered participant stepped on a crowded bus with the intention of blowing up every person who was on it. Got into the middle of the bus, recited his rant, pressed the button, and the bomb didn't detonate. The passengers began to push, punch, and pull at him, realizing he had intended on taking his life. They beat him to such a pulp that he slipped into a coma. When he was awakened days later, he didn't remember the incident or even getting on the bus because he had gotten so deep into disassociation, he no longer remembered his actions. Self-bombers, ladies and gentlemen, have been manipulated without maturity. They have been taught religion without responsibility. And they have been corralled by a community that does not revere the totality of humanity. The grievous mistake of those who are opponents of the mosque being built in New York away from the World Trade Center is that they have the minuscule thinking of believing that self-bombers are just Muslim. There are a lot of self-bombers who are Christian, and a few of them in this sanctuary, because they have been manipulated by people who were not mature. They have religion but never got responsibility. They see themselves but never make a contribution to the larger humanity. And they have been prepared, hear me, to kill themselves in an occult-like church that teaches them that in order for them to show their commitment, lose your life at the expense of your sanity and your family. Ladies and gentlemen, I found a bomber, one who was in fact engaged and enrolled in self-sabotaging behavior long before 9/11 took place. But I found him in Judges chapter 15. And in Judges chapter 15, verse number 16, I find here is somebody who's suffering from acute disassociation, who's having developmental signs of a bipolar mentality. In verse number 16, he's one person. But in verse number 18, he reveals himself to be somebody else. He's the same person with two different personalities. In verse number 16, he says, I've slayed 1,000 men without breaking a sweat. And I used a jawbone of an ass. And they have become what it is I beat them with. What strong swagger. What incredible bravado. What limitless nerve. That he makes the declaration, 1,000 things that were trying to kill me, I defeated. I wonder if I got anybody in the room who understands there's been so much coming at you at the same time. But you were able to dodge and weave and bob through all of those attacks. And the people who are seated beside you have no idea what you came through and what attack you were under. And they want to know, what did you use to ward off that kind of incredible attack? All I used was the jawbone of my mouth. There was something about the mouth of a worshiper that can fight back and attack, that even when 1,000 demons are after you, if you learn how to lift up your voice, there is something about the power of your worship that will push it back. I can tell that many of you don't know that there is in fact a power arsenal lodged in your throat, and the reason why you're being defeated is because you won't open your mouth. But when you have what President Obama calls the audacity of hope, that I can lift my mouth even when I look crazy, even when folk don't understand what it is that I'm going through, I'm not doing it because of the gyrations and the choreography and the timbre of the music. I'm doing it because there's an attack out on my life, and I refuse to let the enemy wipe me out. Please, please forgive me. Because you are sitting beside some erudite and self-righteous and bourgeois, kept together saints who don't know what it's like to go through an attack of 1,000 things at the same time. But I feel like I got some witnesses who just crawled out of the dugout to say, Rev, that was the kind of week that I had. That I had all kind of daggers and rumors and lies and haters and enemies trying to snatch my joy away from me. But even in the rain, I crawled my way in here, declaring no weapon. I promise you, I'm not going to keep you long this morning. I just got to show you something glaring in the text that bothers me, upsets me, and I think is going to unnerve you. Is that in verse number 17, 16, he's bragging about his victory on the field. Verse 17.